Wolf today, and I think it's feeling a little hot here because this is the start of a very exciting summer split ahead of us.
Yeah, that's right. I think earlier the mics were muted, so we have to kind of reintroduce ourselves anyway.
Wow.
So it's okay.
We're back.
We're back.
We're back.
We're
Finally.
excited.
We are back
You know
with
how-
the summer split.
I have to say something. You know
Yes.
how awkward it was with you just moving your mouth and
Oh,
the
man.
viewers not even hearing a thing at all.
That is kind of embarrassing.
Yeah,
actually.
that must have been embarrassing for you.
All right,
Thank
so-
goodness I wasn't the one to open today.
All right, so let's get back to business, shall we? So let's just kind of recap where we are today. Okay, we are in the very first day of the GPL Summer Split 2014. My name is Chris, and of course, just like I mentioned, this is Wolf. And you know, this is a very exciting split because this is the split leading up to Season 4 Worlds.
Yeah, I mean, it's so extremely exciting. And if you guys are just tuning into the GPL for the first time, it is Southeast Asia's premier League of Legends league. And the way the GPL kind of works is slightly different from the LCS. We have two different groups, A and B, and of course the 6 teams will have to battle it out in the group stages. Top 4 teams will move on to the elimination stages, and of course the top team will then get a chance to go to Worlds, and the rest of the teams, based on the circuit points, will then have to fight it off in a gauntlet to decide the second team that will represent Southeast Asia in Worlds. Sounds like a big mouthful. You can check all the information out at gpl.garena.com. But of course, the teams will additionally be fighting for that prize pool of 200,000 US dollars, and of course those circuit points. If you guys are wondering where the teams kind of stand in terms of circuit point standings, ahead in the ranks are, of course, the Azubu Taipei Assassins, followed by AHQ Esports Club, and then the Azubu Taipei Snipers, which, by the way, will not be making an appearance in the summer split of the 2014 circuit. And, of course, in 4th place will be the Vietnamese Saigon Jokers.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that one of the top teams in terms of circuit points will not be making an appearance in this split. And I just kind of want to add up on it as well, because we will be seeing a total of 4 new teams in this current split. The first one being AHQ Fighters, the other one being Machi Esports. So Machi Esports is actually the team that beat out the Taipei Snipers to qualify for the Garena Premier League. So we have 2 new Taiwanese teams, and you know, in the last split we were kind of making some jokes about it, saying, you know, Azubu, then you do have that 2 teams in the organization. So right now it is going to be AHQ that has that 2 teams in GPL. And you know, speaking about 2 teams as well, we will have another new team from the Singapore and Malaysia side. That will be ISG Rebirth. That is also the team that knocked out the Singapore Sentinels to join the Garena Premier League. So we will have a total of 2 Insiders Gaming's teams who is carrying that flag and the organization into the Garena Premier League. And of course, the last team to join into the circuit as well is going to be War Gods, who beat out the Manila Eagles as well. So they are the teams who will be joining Imperium Pro Team, making a resurgence into the Garena Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've heard just now, I just gotten some news that there will be some delays due to some technical difficulties. So I think this gives us an opportune time to kind of talk about the new teams coming in first.
Fantastic. Yeah.
But before we actually talk about it, I'm sure that you guys might want to know who is in which group. So running down the groups first before we kind of go back into talking about the teams such as Fighters, such as Machi Esports, Rebirth, and of course War Gods, let's go through Group A and Group B. So in Group A, it's going to be Azubu Taipei Assassins and HQ Fighters representing the Taiwanese region, Imperium Pro Team representing the Philippine region, Saigon Jokers for, of course, the Vietnamese region, and the Singapore-Malaysian region for Group A will be Insiders Gaming Legends, and the Thai region will be the Bangkok Titans.
Right.
In Group B, it's going to be AHQ and Machi Esports, HQ main team, no, not HQ Fighters, representing the Taiwanese region, War Gods representing the Philippines region, Saigon Fantastic 5 and Neo Lucian Esports Full Lewis from Vietnam, and finally, of course, Insidious Gaming Rebirth in Group B, rounding out that one. So 12 teams in total vying for a spot at the 2014 World Season. And let's kind of go back and jump back into the 4 new teams that will be competing in the summer split of the GPL. Firstly, HQ Fighters. We kind of talked about it as before the broadcast went live, and I kind of coined, or it's kind of said that HQ Fighters are a team that, well, their name's really apt because they love to fight. They love to pick comps, they just love to fight all the time, and they're a very good team fighting team in general.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those strategies are attributed to the common coach, who is HQ Beck. He is the one giving the behind the scenes and the strategies on what's going on. That's why you can see sort of a lot of similarities between the HQ main team as well as HQ Fighters. And You can see some common strategies such as the unstoppable Skyfall that we have seen very commonly in the spring split. So I will be looking forward to whether that is going to occur in the summer split with AHQ fighters. You know, we have seen them play in the Taiwanese promotional tournament, so that's one thing that we can look out for. But that being said, though, they have that one distinctive feature that separates these two teams. Because if you look at it closely, AHQ is more of a team fighting team, so they really like to sort of extend the laning phase and then build up some items for themselves and then go for those 5v5 straight up after that. But if you look at fighters, just like what you mentioned, they just love to fight. So they will find engages and skirmishes at any given opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, their synergy, of course, from the old AHQ lineup. I mean, two members from the main AHQ lineup, Lantier and Mr. Elvis, coming in to kind of helm the team, be the pillars for the team, be the leaders for the team, and their synergy is something to be feared for. We will be seeing them fight off in the first week against, I believe, it will be, let's see, the Taipei Assassin. So
that's right.
It's going to be an amazing match to look out for. But before we actually get into the schedule of the day, let's kind of move on to Machi Esports, because I know there's been some news trending about Machi Esports. Let's not talk about the bad news, but instead let's talk about how the kind of team that they are actually. And you kind of mentioned that, you know, they have a very good first 3 minutes of the game. And it's not even the first 3 minutes of the game, because it's the first 3 minutes of the pick and ban phase that they're really, really good at. So tell me more about it, Chris.
So for Machi Esports, overall as a team, if you look at them, I kind of want to talk a little bit about how they started off, because they are pretty much new to the scene, new to the Taiwanese scene as well. They do have some names that are very famous in the Taiwanese solo queue ladder, but nothing too big of a personality per se. But for them, if you look at their track history, especially in the promotional tournament, the first 2 weeks they were looking like they were in shambles. They lost 3 out of their first 4 games, and then they were kind of like the underdogs in the promotional tournament. But then suddenly they just found this new burst of strength, and then they just beat out all competition. They beat out very famous teams such as HK Priest, You Can't Stop Me as well, and I think the biggest name is going to be Taipei Snipers. So they are a team that has come from a long way, and now they are finally in the Garena Premier League. And for them as a team, if you look at their strategies and some of the things that they play through, it's not so much as a very distinctive strategy play style that they do in the game itself, but what I really like about them is during that pick and ban phase, because they know very well what the strengths of their opponents are, and then they just take away 1 or 2 champions off those centerpiece, and then it will just cripple their opponents, leave them in a very uncomfortable position, and that's how they capitalize, and that's how they win games.
Yeah, another thing to note about Machi Esports, other than the fact that, you know, they really do thorough research about their opponents, is their jungler J Kane. Previously the top laner for the YE Spiders. He's an experienced player, not to say the least, and he really kind of shines in this Machi Esports lineup. And yes, they have some distinct weaknesses, especially their bottom lane, in terms of at least the VODs that I've watched in their qualifying tournament in Taiwan. But J Kane has always been the one to step up his game and be the one to lead his team, try to be the aggressor and try to get his lanes kind of snowballing. And these are one of the few kind of key notes or key points about the Machi Esports Club. But let's move on to the next team, War Gods. Not much that we know about them, but some interesting picks we actually kind of we kind of noticed, especially in their pick and ban phase. You might want to talk about that.
Yeah, so for War Gods themselves, they are very similar to Machi Esports in terms of where they come from. They are a relatively new team as well, but they
Harold from the Philippines.
Yeah, yeah, fine. But overall, as a team, they are not as probably publicized as before as some of the bigger teams out there, probably like Minaski or even Manila Eagles as well. But they are definitely a new team that just broke through the scene with a very solid performance, I would say, because they did tie with Imperium Pro Team in the relegation tournaments in the PGS itself. And what's interesting to take note about the team is that in terms of their strategies in the game itself, it's somewhat very typical of the Philippines teams, which means that they are very comfortable sitting in lane, just farming up, get some items in, and then finally going for pushes right after that. So the early game is pretty defensive, and they like to sit back a fair bit. And we've got some
invaded by music. I don't know. Arcade Hackerim decides to walk by or something. But yeah, you were saying
that was pretty quick. Okay, so anyway, back to War Gods themselves. They have some very funky picks. If you look at it, JLC up in the top lane, he has played a couple of games of Kill, a couple of games of Jax, but what really stands out is that he has played 3 games of any top lane in the 10 games that they have played in
the PGS. Yeah,
that's right.
That's really interesting. Okay, moving on. Finally, I mean, if you guys have joined us, we apologize, of course. There are some technical delays with one of the teams, Imperium Pro Team. Sorry to call you guys out, but yes, there's been technical delays due to computer problems. But this is the GPL Summer Split 2014. We will be moving on to the matches really shortly. But lastly, before we kind of talk about today's schedule and before we move on to the matches proper, let's talk about Insidious Gaming Rebirth, the sister team of Insidious Gaming Legends, who actually performed quite well in the previous split of the GPL during the spring split.
Yeah, and I think that's ISG main team.
That's right.
ISG Legends, and they kind of renamed themselves as Legends as well. So for Rebirth as their sister team, if you look at some of the members in the team itself, they are not entirely new to the regional scene because LY4 was previously playing on Singapore Sentinels, and now he's on Rebirth side. And of course, the rest of the members, they are pretty much renowned players in the server itself, and they have come together, you know, just clumped up together as a team, and then finally finding the right strategies and the right kind of communications, and then they broke through the Legend Circuit, which is Singapore and Malaysia's qualifying tournaments. And then if you look at their journey, they really have some very nice upsets for themselves because they were the first team to sort of beat out the Singapore Sentinels to move them out of the tournament itself, and then they were the ones who sort of beat out Insidious Gaming during the semifinals, if I'm not wrong. So we also witnessed the TLC finals in the past weekend, which Legends was the one that sort of saw through the game, and they were the ones who beat out Rebirth in a 3-2 victory. So in that sense, I feel that both Insidious Gaming teams are very close in terms of standards, but Rebirth definitely has much more to look out for because at the end of the day, they are the newer teams, and I think that we can expect to see some very nice performances from them. And of course, they have some player changes as well. I heard that Birdie is not playing anymore, and it's going to be Vera that's going to sub in his position instead.
Yeah, we have to see what the changes will be. They won't be playing today though, but speaking about who is playing today, let's kind of take a look at the matchups that we have in the GPL Week 1 date number 1. So first off, we have the Saigon Jokers taking on Imperium Pro Team. That is the first match. Of course, that has been delayed slightly, actually quite a bit, so we really apologize for that. They are having some technical difficulties. Moving on for the second match is going to be AHQ Fighters up against the Taipei Assassins.
Right, and for the third match for the night, it's going to be Marchi Esports going up against the main roster of AHQ Esports Club. And then for the final match of the night, it is going to be the Saigon Fantastic Five going up against one of the new teams that we were kind of talking about, War Gods from the Philippines.
Yeah, that's right. So those are the matches that we have today. So it does seem like the technical difficulties are still plaguing Imperium Pro Team. Okay. We are so sorry about that. So do stay tuned. We will be right back with the first game. The Saigon Jokers will be taking on Imperium Pro Team once everything is settled.